Hi everybody. Welcome to Business 300 week number 2, where we're going to be discussing organizational change, leadership, and culture, and how these three things interact. So let's first talk through what's due this week. Each week kind of has the same structure for the assignments, so the good news is that you can sort of prepare for what's coming. So the first assignment that's due on any given week is a discussion post. You'll find details in this PowerPoint and a very detailed rubric posted in Canvas for the discussion posts. So you'll want to read through the question carefully, and you'll also want to comment on some of your peers' posts, at least 2 people. And there's a reason why we do that. You know, the class isn't just about, us reading material and going through things, especially in an online environment. It's really about kind of creating a discussion that helps us understand the course material. And although that can be challenging to achieve in an online class, it can be possible. And so I really encourage you to spend time commenting on your peer posts and make the feedback valuable. And hopefully in turn your peers will do the same. And my goal is also to be part of those discussions and to be commenting on people's posts. Don't take it personally if I don't post on every single post every single week. Due to the amount of grading, sometimes that's just not possible. But I do want to be part of those discussions, and I hope you guys do as well. So in addition to the discussion post, we also have assignment 2, which is very similar in format to the requirements, format-wise anyway, to what you did for your pre-class assignment. There's a very detailed rubric listed for this as well in Canvas. And, I really do recommend that people take the time to read through those rubrics in detail. So the assignments get posted to me as a file that you upload in Canvas. And from there, I go ahead and read them and send you guys back comments. Okay, so there are some details for if you're looking at the PowerPoint that you can see below about the specific questions. So let's talk about that. Actually, maybe I can't do that easily like this. Seem to be having trouble finding my notes. So let me back out here so that we can actually go over what's due specifically for the discussion. So in this week's discussion, you're going to analyze the impact of management decisions and strategies and how that impacts stockholders. And what I mean by that is not people who literally own stock. Maybe the better way to actually say that is people who have a stake. And, when management makes decisions, those decisions have an impact all the way down the organization, from the very top to the person who sweeps the floor. And for that reason, it's important to think about the impact of decisions and to understand each level of an organization and how it will be affected by change. So for this week, I want you to, obviously there's a number of readings and videos, and there are a number of questions that are listed. So I'm not going to read through each and every one in great detail, but do look at the different options. You don't have to answer all the questions, but answer at least one of them. And you want to try to always be connecting the assignments back to the readings as much as possible, or other resources that you use in the class that are posted. Okay, moving on to the assignment, which is due this coming Saturday. The assignment follows along with a similar trend to what our discussion posts were. So you don't need to think of the discussion and the assignment as necessarily separate. I'd really rather you thought about them as the discussion post is kind of your initial getting your thoughts out there on the topic. And based on the feedback that you get from me and from your peers, it gives you some time to reflect on the topic a little more before the assignment is due, where you're actually analyzing how this all happens. So there's 2 different parts to this assignment. Oops, sorry, my page is skipping a little bit here on me, so let me just scroll down a little bit. Okay, in this course, I did send out an announcement about this. There is a simulation, and the simulation is through Harvard. which is kind of interesting. And they put on some really good programs. So I think that you'll find the simulations to be helpful. And what I want you to do is actually go ahead and register and read the online simulation foreground. And it's all listed here. And when you practice with the simulation, it'll give you some good prep time for the next few weeks where we're going to be doing actual exercises in the simulation. So, and I would like you to also, based on those simulations, send me a note briefly looking at the various roles in change management and letting me know that you've registered for the simulation. So all you really need to do is, either you can shoot me an email or something like that, but I just want to make sure that everybody's gotten into the simulations and is working towards this. So in terms of the second part of the assignment, I want you to look at figure 16.4, which is on page 345 of your book, which is, and the book, just to throw this out there, you can access it either through, well, the main way is through the Hatch Library, and there are two different options when you go into the Hatch Library. I usually just use the search engine and just type in NTL, which is the first 3 letters of the book title, and it pops right up. And then it'll give you 2 options. It'll ask you whether you want to view it online or whether you want to download it. And so do look at those different things. The other option, if you're not someone who enjoys reading online, you can go online and purchase even an older edition of the textbook. This handbook has been published for quite some time, so there are older editions. And for the most part, this material hasn't changed drastically over time. I think that they've updated some of the language and things like that, but other than that, the previous edition is acceptable. So, hopefully everybody's doing okay with accessing the readings. So again, based on figure 16.4, leadership fundamentals and distant variable, I want you to rate both your variable and function skills. And you'll learn more about what that is as you do the reading. And I want you to discuss how each component affects your strategic decisions and how that corresponds to your different mastery levels. And you'll also learn what those are a little bit about. The learning mode, information source, learning skills, leader role. And so please take a look at the assignments and let me know if any questions come up. You certainly are always welcome to email me any questions or concerns, and I try to get back to people as quickly as I possibly can. I understand that, especially being an online class, that it's hard not having that face-to-face time with an instructor. And so I really do try to communicate, and I hope those that I've been in touch with have found that communication to be satisfactory. Okay, so moving on, tips for discussion posts and assignments. And in having taught this course once before, although with a slightly different curriculum, I've learned a little bit about the discussion posts and assignments, and I thought I'd share some of those helpful hints with you all. So there's a detailed rubric posted in Canvas for each discussion post and assignment. And what that rubric actually allows you to do is to see exactly how I'm going to score your work, how many points are associated with different sections, and the key things that you need to hit on. So I really recommend that you read through them carefully so you understand what you're being evaluated on, and then that way you can make sure to include those things in your discussion or assignment. Formatting and grammar are important, and they do count towards your grade, more so for the assignments than anything else, the written assignments, but even in your discussion posts. Read through your work before submitting. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a paper where I know that no proofreading happened. Certainly I can tell on my end, and your peers will be able to tell as well. Formatting and grammar definitely do count, so please, please, please read through your paper. Read it aloud to yourself. Even if it only takes 5 minutes to do so after you finish your assignment, it's worth the time. And your grade won't then suffer from small points being taken off or things like that. You want to link your work to the course readings, videos, simulations, etc., wherever you can. So, especially, like I said, being a course that's online, these discussion posts and assignments are my way of evaluating how much you understand the course material. And part of understanding it is being able to connect what you're writing to those readings and videos and so forth. So please do cite where you can. Make sure that you're using proper formatting for your citations. And if you come up with any additional videos or articles that you find that apply to the course, feel free to also share those or to include them in your papers, and I'd be happy to take a peek at them. And finally, the last tip is do post valuable feedback to your peers. And don't be afraid to start discussions. The discussion posts are meant to do that. And although it may feel a little bit forced at first for us all to be communicating this way, I do think that discussions really are the key to online courses being successful. So please do participate, give that valuable feedback to your peers, and in return, hopefully they'll do the same. Okay, now that we've talked through the assignments, why don't we talk about back to the actual material. Oh no, I just inserted a slide. Hold on here. Technical difficulty. Okay, back to my slideshow. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the content for this week, and I want to touch on a few key points. The first one being that organizations are continuously changing. And although this may seem like, duh, yeah, we know, change is constant, even if you think about your own life, businesses are exactly the same. They are not static. They are continuously evolving. And due to that, it's important to get and master how to effectively institute change, because change is inevitable, and your ability as an OD consultant to help your organization effectively go through a change and be successful in the goals of that change is really critical. So there's a few things to understand about this change. Why are organizations having to constantly do this? Today's business environment almost requires that organizations constantly change and adapt. And that business environment is both internal and external. So by internal, I mean within the organization, people taking initiative, realizing that there's problems or inefficiencies, companies implementing things like Lean and Six Sigma. That's kind of internal motivation. But then there's also the external, the pressures that different businesses have and different types of organizations have, whether that's a business environment that's struggling more with regulatory aspects and trying to keep up. Personally, I work in a business like that. I work in a manufacturing company. And so our external business environment is extremely influential on our change. So for example, we are currently ISO certified, which is it's a certification that, if you're not familiar with it, kind of has some baseline standards for how businesses conduct their work and the records that they keep and so forth. And in order to be certified, there's a whole process and set of regulations that need to be met. And every few years, there's a new set of regulations that comes out. And based on those new set of regulations, the businesses need to change in order to meet the new standard before their next audit. So we're actually currently in the process of going from the 2008 ISO standard to the 2015 ISO standard in my organization, and it requires actually quite a bit of work. So this is an external force that, in order for us to maintain our business, we need this certification, and so we are forced to change as a result. So that's an example of kind of how the business environment actually requires organizations to change. Something that I want you to spend some time looking over is the systems perspective to organizational development, which is in your text on pages 235 through 236. And what this perspective really gets at is that within an organization, there's different levels, and you need to look at the organization from each of these perspectives as you're instituting change. So the three levels that get talked about in the systems perspective are the organization itself, the business as a whole, the 10,000-foot view, the groups or teams that are going to be working on this project. So, if it's a project involving the HR department, who is it going to impact? What team is going to work on this? And then the individuals, the actual individual players that are going to be driving this change, or players that are not cooperative in change, and how all of that plays into your change efforts. So do take a look at this. There's a couple of charts and things like that about the systems perspective in your class, in your text rather. Do check them out. It's actually a pretty key component to organizational development, so definitely spend some time and understand what they're talking about. Another thing that I want you to make sure that you understand and take a look at is the 3 C's model for change, which equals, the 3 C's are capacity, competency, and capability. And when you're assessing an organization or a team or the individuals, you need to consider this. What is their capacity for change? Can they take on more work? Are they able to adapt, or do they struggle in that area? Then you get to competency. Do they have the needed skills? Do they have the knowledge needed to actually execute this change? Do they need another person from another department to fill in a gap? Something around those lines. And then finally, capability. Are they capable of actually doing the work? Do people have the time? Do people have the drive? Is it actually capable to make this change happen? And again, based on the systems perspective, you would need to assess this for your organization level, your team level, and your individual level. And the other point here is that not to think of these levels as truly distinct levels. There's overlap, and there's intersections, and there's feedback, and there's kind of puts and pulls between these different organizations and groups and individuals. So I want you to spend some time checking out tables 12.1 and figure 12.2 in your text, which go over this model in more detail. Okay, so I also found an interesting article that I posted up. It's not posted as a required reading, but I thought it was pretty interesting because I decided to Google how prevalent change was, just to try to illustrate to you all how constant this need to change really is in the business environment. So I found an article from Entrepreneur Magazine. They also have a website. And the recent article, and it was from July of this year, is the 5 principles for dealing with constant change. So the fact that an article even exists and is called this should indicate to you just how common this is. But let's take a look at the article, and hopefully my hyperlink works. Oh no, it didn't. Okay, let me back up here and see if I can get my hyperlink to work correctly for me. Bear with me for a moment. Okay. All right. Well, you know what? Rather than trying to get my hyperlink to work, I am just going to paste this into my internet browser. So let's close out some of my things here. Sorry, I wasn't planning to have to use my internet browser at all tonight. Okay, and let's plug in this article. Okay. So here's the article, and it's a very quick read. It takes approximately 4 minutes, as the corner tells you, but there's a couple of interesting things that I think are worth highlighting. Oh my goodness here, I am having challenges. Okay, now that we're back, no more ads. All right, let's discuss the article here. Oh boy, I really am having challenges here, huh? Okay, there we go. Sorry, everybody. All right, so tips to dealing with change, and they go through some of the drivers for change. The first is thinking of people as partners, not just workers. And this is actually a really important principle that I've learned in my own education and in my own experience working in the business world. The more you think of people as commodities, just resources to move around, the less motivated people get. And so having two-way communication where people feel like there's a partnership in what you're trying to do really can drive your change efforts forward. And it's important to understand that change is actually done by the people, not just the management who's making the decisions. Okay, number 2, people, not just employees. So again, just like we can't think of
people as commodities or resources to move around, we also need to realize that they're not just employees, that they're people. That people think and work in a certain way, and you need to help earn your employees' confidence. Okay. Tip 3, participants, not just staff members. These people are not only here to do their work, but they're here to support the change. They're part of the change. Okay, number 4, security, not just safety. Leaders really need to feel secure in their own identities as well as their own position within a firm. So it's important to have two-way communication and for people to feel like leaders understand, and that leaders are somebody that staff can talk to. In addition, okay, the final one, competency, not just reactivity. You want to build change into how your company operates so that there's a plan for how to execute change when it happens. It's not just being reactive, it's not just fighting fires, but it's actually having an actual plan for how to handle it. Okay, so anyway, I just thought this article was kind of interesting. So let's now go back to our PowerPoint. Okay, and let's jump back into where we were. Oh, of course, we have to go through all the slides again. Okay, so a couple of other things that I want to touch on. Organizational change theories and models. There are a number of organizational change theories and models. So check out table 13.1 for a really good summary of those. But based on the theories, change models have then been developed out of the theories. And there's a good exhibit in 13.1 that has an overview of the most common models. So again, theories or business theory then predicates business models. And each of the different models has pros and cons. And it's not to say that one's really better better than another or not. What it really is that as an OD consultant, you have to understand your client. And you have to ask yourself, what kind of organization does my client have? What kind of change are they trying to do? What challenges do they have? Are they a for-profit business or a nonprofit? Are they, what are their values and their mission? And then you help them select the most appropriate model for change. And in week 1, we learned about action research. And there's actually a model that's based off of that action research model, which is Lewin's change model, which gets into where this theory that change is like a block of ice. And so if you unfreeze whatever you have currently in place, then you change up the model, and then you refreeze your company's culture around that change, that you can be successful. So please do check out that model. Okay, and actually here's a little snapshot of it, but this is actually the Lewin's model of action research, and this also leads into the other model that I was just describing. Okay, and the last thing I want to touch on is that leadership is really key. So, people define leadership in a lot of different ways, and people think of leaders and who they would consider a leader can vary greatly. However, for the purposes of this class and for the purposes of business, I would like to suggest that this is a good definition. That leadership is the process of learning and adapting based on the interactions between a leader and their followers. That's based on a shared value system and mutually beneficial goals. So let's think about that. If you're the CEO of a business, your followers are your employees. And your value system is your company culture. What do you stand for? What are you proud of? What's at your core? And what are your mutually beneficial goals? You want the company to do well. The CEO certainly wants that to happen, and so should the employees. And that's really leadership, is understanding that connection and understanding how to help your followers understand that value system and get on board with your mutually beneficial goals. Take a look at the experiential learning cycle, or otherwise known as ELT, which is in figure 16.1. And also do take a look at the RSVP model of leadership,
which is in figure 16.2. And RSVP stands for Relationships, Strategies, Vision, and Performance. And here's just the references for our textbook that we used. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining me for our week 2 discussion. Look for week 3 to post soon.